Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is The Mighty Thor, issue 178, dated July 1970. As far as my impressions of this comic, to be honest, I was a little underwhelmed. I would have, if I had bought this issue based on the cover and my anticipation of it, and that would have been like a real rocking battle between Thor and the Abomination, I would have felt kind of disappointed. We see there's two villains that Thor is up against, because there's also, in addition to the Abomination, there's also the Stranger, who, yeah, he was kind of a strange character, so to speak. This issue is a little strange, though, and in the weird relationship that the Stranger and the Abomination have. I couldn't help noticing how really kind of like an abusive parental relationship between these two. See the cover. Cover is a good one. It's by John Buscema. The Abomination is attacking, and we see the Stranger looking on. Stranger, who's a very powerful villain in the Marvel Universe, although he might not necessarily be considered a quote villain. He just probably has like a different morality than we have. So by his own morality, he's the good guy. But in the comic books, he's the bad guy. And he wants Thor dead. And the Abomination says that he will be the one who will take care of it. And the title of this is Death is a Stranger. Excuse me. So we see the opening splash page, and we see a very regal image of Odin, and it looks like there's some type of celebration going on. I know this wasn't the intent, but there's definitely a white supremacy vibe with this. Here, we see everyone in Asgard seems to be into the celebration. We see Thor is there. We see his best friend Balor the Bold, I think. And we see Thor's real girlfriend. There was that weird romantic triangle because Jane Foster, who was the original love interest, was still around. But I think Lady Sif is what she's called. I don't know. I don't really remember her pronunciation. She's there with Thor, and again, John Buscema draws very beautiful women. However, Vince Colletta can ruin those images very quickly with his kind of lazy ass inks, and there's a little bit of laziness here. Although I will say, Odin, the close up of Odin here is really regal. So anyway, the story is by Stan Lee. I said John Buscema is the artist. I don't know how much Lee was involved in the writing at this point. I think he was really starting to want to be Stan Lee, media star, rather than Stan Lee, comic book editor. And I mentioned Vince Colletta did the inks. So far, it's a mixed job. The inks look clean. And some of the art looks great, but you can kind of see where Vince kind of cut corners. Sometimes even on the same page. And lettering is by Artie Smelnick. I think he's a name. You see that name all the time in comics of this era. So anyway, this big regal feast. Odin is basically commanding everyone to be happy, which is weird. He's always solemn. And everyone's kind of happy, and then he basically says, "Let merriment be in order, or else." He is quite the authoritarian, but the Asgardians seem to like being led this way. We see the big feast, big Norse feast. Thor and Lady Sif, they're talking. Thor looks a little troubled. He kind of senses some danger, so he's kind of feeling a little unease, I should say. He's concerned about Loki. Lady Sif isn't as concerned about Loki as Thor is. But, Thor just has a bad feeling about this. So then we go to another galaxy, and we see a meteorite just rushing toward a planet. However, it's not a meteorite. It's actually the Abomination. This is a character that had been in Marvel for a little while at this time. I think in his first appearance, the Stranger kind of took the Abomination as basically as a henchman. For some reason, the Stranger likes plucking henchmen from other planets to do his dirty work, but at the same time, he doesn't really pay too much attention to them. So sometimes those guys that are captured, they kind of wander off and they do their thing and they can kind of escape. I remember, I think Magneto and the Toad were basically enslaved by the Stranger, but they escaped his world. The Stranger came back looking for them. So, and it looks like this is the case with the Abomination. So, the Stranger, I mean, he's a tough, disciplined parent, but he's not really a responsible one. He doesn't keep track of his thugs. Okay, so at this point, the Abomination, he mentions a fight that he had with the Silver Surfer, and I vaguely remember that issue. So he probably escaped at the time. They're retelling the story with the Silver Surfer. He's talking about the events of Silver Surfer 12, so I don't have to go through it. Some nice drawings here. Basically how Surfer defeated the Abomination, and then the witches kind of banished him to another dimension. And he ended up back on the Stranger's prison planet. So the place that he had one time escaped from, he finds himself on that planet, although not in the facility. So the Abomination recognizes where he is, but he also recognizes that he has a different view from the last time he was here. So he knows how to break into the place. And the Abomination's kind of going through these halls very carefully, kind of like if you were in school and you kind of snuck into the building during lunch hour when you weren't supposed to be there, and you kind of just trying to avoid the security guard. This would be it. This would be what you're doing. This is like this is like grade school, junior high school stuff. So the Stranger's doing something. He has some kind of scheme in his head. He's talking to himself, and also the Abomination's talking to himself, because the villains talk to himself. The heroes think out loud. The Stranger, he's kind of talking about his device that he's playing with right now. The Abomination's watching him, but watching him from a distance. The story makes very clear the Abomination is very frightened of the Stranger. There are very few creatures who are dom with the Stranger, so most of them are subs, and they kind of tend to be, they tread carefully with this guy. So anyway, the Abomination sees that the Stranger has left. He teleported himself somewhere else. He's kind of inquisitive about the machinery, and he sees an image of Thor. I'm guessing what's happening is that in places of interest to the Stranger, the teleport machine will kind of just go to different realities. And in this one, it just picked up Thor on the screen. So it's honing in on Thor in this reality. The Abomination, he accidentally hits a switch. He's acting like a 12-year-old here. He's saying, I hope I don't get into trouble. And he flips the switch, so it looks like he's activating the device, the teleportation device. And the Abomination was able to teleport Thor into his reality. So now Thor is on the Stranger's prison planet, along with the Abomination. However, Thor isn't familiar with the Abomination. And the Abomination, before he mutated through the gamma rays, he was a spy. He was a Russian spy. So he's kind of like on the ball, and he's definitely underhanded. So rather than duking it out with Thor initially, as Thor comes in, he kind of tries to play Thor. He kind of plays that he is a victim and that he's just a guy who looks really ugly, who's just kind of getting his way in the universe. Thor kind of buys into this argument because Thor doesn't have any counter information otherwise. But Thor's a little suspicious of him because, God damn it, when you look like the Abomination, people aren't going to take your word for it. But nevertheless, Thor's still going along. He's giving the Abomination the benefit of the doubt. So Thor's cautious, but he's still saying, "Listen, I got to take your word for it that you're a good guy." Okay, so before I go back to the story, I will take a look at the mighty Marvel checklist. Take a look at what comics were out there and which ones you should have bought if you had 12 cents back then, or 15 cents, I should say. Fantastic Four 100. This is the 100th anniversary. That was a big milestone. Usually when a comic, sometimes 50 was a big milestone for certain comics, but usually the 100th issue was a big one. And it was sort of Marvel that started that, because DC, when their comics hit kind of like 100, 200, 300, they just treated it like any other issue. It wasn't until Marvel started, hyping up, the 100th issue, and that DC sort of started following. This is an anniversary issue. This is like the 500th issue of Superman. That's something DC did later. Marvel did very good here. So definitely would have gotten that Fantastic Four. Kirby was just about out the door at that point. Spider-Man 86. This is the issue with the Black Widow. You can't go wrong with John Romita's Spider-Man, particularly during this era. And particularly when he's drawing like the Black Widow in that tight black outfit. Silver Surfer 17. I could live without the Silver Surfer, to be honest. It was a weird character. It was a character. A lot of his appearances had value. Like you go to the comic shop and maybe something with the Silver Surfer is a little bit more than other comics, but I never saw anything special in that character, really. Avengers 77 doesn't really say much about the issue. Just templated stuff. Thor 177. I think I'm reading 178, so there's definitely kind of a weird thing happening there. Captain America 127. Says Cap must turn traitor. Not really vague about what's going on. I don't remember the issue offhand. Captain America was weird at that time in that it was a flagship title, but it wasn't a flagship seller. And they were always trying to do things to make it more popular. And some of the stuff worked, some of it didn't. Like, they brought in the Falcon to sort of increase sales through diversity. It worked, DEI worked. And they did other things where they had Captain America as kind of a biker, because there was a popular movie at the time called Easy Rider, and the main character was known as Captain America. So Marvel tried to piggyback on that success, and didn't work. Iron Man 27, never really a fan of Iron Man. Submariner 27, I did like some Submariners. I actually liked it later in the series. In the mid-70s, there were actually some really good Submariner comics, and I'm going to be looking at one soon. Sergeant Fury 79, never bought those. Tower of Shadows, there's some Wally Wood artwork in that one. I don't know if that would be enough for me to want to invest. Marvel Superheroes, I always bought the reprints. Either Marvel's Greatest Comics or Marvel Superheroes. It didn't matter, I bought them. I bought Marvel Tales too. Marvel Tales is on 27. Yeah, I would have bought that. The stuff they're mentioning here is sort of like the cowboy or kind of girls comics. Still on sale. Yeah, it's fine. I can pass saying something about those comics. There's the Marvel Mania in-house ad. I think Marvel Mania was like a separate company. There was a writer, Marky Vander, who wrote a couple books, comic books, and his essays are amazing. And he talked about what a scam this company was, Marvel Mania, but he didn't go into details. I recommend his books. So go back to the story. We see some, what could have been nice John Buscema artwork, kind of ruined by Vince Colletta. Yeah, Vince did a kind of a bad job here. He kind of really took a lot of the dimension out of John Buscema's work here, and it looks very fuzzy. Vince, you did a really bad job here. So anyway, the Abomination leads Thor into a room with the other thugs that the Stranger has been keeping. Apparently, the Abomination is sort of the alpha, so he's the guy who leads this group. So they're kind of gonna follow along with what he's doing, and they see him with Thor. Thor tries to break him out of their prison. So he's looking at these monsters, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll help them. I'll help you release these guys. I'm sure they're nice, innocent guys." I mean, come on, Thor. Then Thor kind of breaks a hole in the wall, but everyone's frozen in fear at this point because it turns out the Stranger comes back because apparently an alarm was rung. And at this point, they're more afraid of the Stranger than escaping. So they're sort of not even thinking, they just want to hide from this guy. They're really frightened of this guy. So anyway, Thor is talking to the Stranger. Thor's familiar with the Stranger because, like I said, the Stranger is like a super-powered, like a galaxy-powered being. So it's like that saying, anyone who's anyone in the galaxy knows who the Stranger is. Yeah, Thor knows. And Thor's not backing down from him. He's going to go ahead. The Stranger makes the ground under Thor into quicksand. Thor is sinking. Thor does not like this. So he uses his hammer. He strikes against the Stranger. So he's not too worried about the quicksand. The hammer misses the Stranger. The hammer comes back to Thor. Gets him out of the quicksand rather easily. The Stranger's impressed. The Stranger kind of wants a fight here. He's actually a little tired of just rolling over the rest of the galaxy. So, and he likes to collect. So he's gonna say, "Dude, I'm gonna collect your corpse." And Thor is like, "No way, you're gonna get a fight from me." And then the Stranger becomes multiple Strangers. So I guess this is sort of, can you tell who's real and who's a replica? So anyway, we see 3 large-sized Strangers attacking the one regular-sized Thor. Thor he's ready to meet this challenge. He actually thinks he has the right guy. And first it sounds like Thor's going to give up to the Stranger. Then the Stranger finds out no, and he knocks a hole into the ground, and this traps the replicas. So he figured out which one was the replicas, which one was the real one. The Stranger's more impressed now. He realizes that he's going to have a challenge on his hand. The Stranger's kind of he has some good humor about it because he thinks he's going to win. And you're pretty powerful if you think, I'm going to kill Thor real easy. However, Thor is not taking his opponent lightly. He knows that he's in for the fight of his life. And he decides to take leave because he just doesn't know enough about the Stranger to feel confident about going into battle. So Thor kind of thinks when he goes into battle, he's not like Hulk when Hulk's in crackhead mode. Thor's always thinking. So he kind of needs to know the lay of the land. He needs to know what's going on more before he can go back and battle the stranger. And we go back to Asgard. We see Odin again, just angry and constipated as he always is. I was never really a big fan of Odin of Odin, I guess, in Asgard, because I just didn't really care too much about that storyline. So it discouraged me from buying Thor, because there'd be a whole bunch of stuff that I did not know and or did not care about. So we see Lady Sif. She's speaking up for Thor, and apparently she knows that Thor's gone, because Thor had been transported to the stranger's prison planet, and Lady Sif wants to investigate and see what she can come up with. Interesting ad here. Jim Steranko had written a 2-volume book on the history of comic books. And Steranko's art still had a lot of pull. I think he actually might have been still drawing at this time, though he was close to kind of moving on to other things. So it's kind of interesting, the ad. So we see Thor, he flies back. He knows he needs to hide, and he decides that he's going to become his alter ego, Donald Blake. Donald Blake actually is not a real person. It's not like an actual person kind of merged with Thor and they switched realities, kind of like with Captain Marvel and Rick Jones for a while. Donald Blake is kind of a human avatar for Thor. So if Thor wanted to, say, live life as a human, that would be the human he would be. They made him much better looking than when he first appeared, because he was like this kind of nerdy Max Wright looking guy. Max Wright was from Alf. Very nebbish. He looks like he should be in a romance comic, actually. Donald Blake. He does have the walking cane though, but everything else is fine. Hey, he goes on Tinder. This guy's doing well. So anyway, Donald Blake, he's talking about the stranger. I guess he wants to have a different mindset. He says, maybe if I think as a human for a while, that will help break something. Donald Blake, again, he's thinking out loud, talking about his life as Thor, and he notices that he hears other voices. So he's kind of sneaking up on a group of beings, because they're not human. And we see that all these sort of monstrous henchmen that the stranger had picked up from other worlds, they're all listening to the Abomination, because apparently the Abomination was sort of what would they call it? The overseers? Yeah. So Abomination was kind of the overseer to the stranger's kind of slave enforcement wing of his empire. Donald Blake is just simply walking through this crowd. I have no idea why. He knows he can become Thor. That's what he's thinking. He's just pushing through, and he's trying to talk sense to the Abomination. I think the Abomination wants to. The Abomination wants to challenge the stranger directly, and or even sneaky directly, but still directly. Donald Blake is saying, no, don't do that. That's not a good idea. The Abomination's not hearing it. He's saying, listen, this clown is nothing but the enemy. Go after him. It says here that Donald Blake forgot to change into Thor. So he was so horrified by the Abomination's speech that he forgot. Maybe I should go in there as Thor. He says, no. I gotta talk to this guy right now. I gotta tell him all my radio, talk show points. Same way, Donald Blake is kind of being thrown around here. The Abomination's going after him. Suddenly, Donald Blake realizes that he's going to do what he should have done. But then just before it happens, the Abomination grabs the cane. So the Abomination didn't know why Blake was trying to do what he did, but the Abomination was like, you're not doing that. And the Abomination actually kind of looks at Donald Blake as really pathetic and saying, we don't need this puny guy. He can go. So we see Donald Blake. He's trying to get away. He doesn't have his cane. He's trying to climb. He does have a lame leg, so he can't go far. But it turns out that the Abomination and his henchmen are leaving the encampment. So then Blake is kind of hoping that he can go back and find the cane and become Thor again. So he's kind of like counting on winning hide and seek here. And it turns out that he doesn't have to. Lady Sif is there. She somehow was able to sort of make this cosmic trace. She's there with her, beloved, the weaker version of the beloved, the beta. And, maybe sometimes she likes a little beta. So then Donald Blake, pounces his cane to the ground and he's Thor again. And again, Vince Colletta is not doing John Buscema any favors here. He really isn't. He took probably what was really good artwork and just kind of rushed it. And it turns out that some of the trolls that are under the control of the Abomination or following the Abomination, they see the two. They're about to attack. They don't know their reputations. They'll just say, hey, fresh meat. Thor comes back with a blow. He uses debris to push the trolls away. The trolls are not frightened of this. They live to fight. The Abomination jumps on Thor. So basically after 18 pages, these two are putting their dukes up. Abomination and his henchmen, they want to kill Thor. The Abomination himself is as strong as the Hulk. Then you have a bunch of guys who aren't as strong, but there's a lot of them. And they're on Thor, and it looks really bad, but Thor was able to, all by himself, push these guys away. Then it looks like they're all unconscious. So Thor's watching this. And it turns out the others are running, and they're running because the stranger has come back. So Thor looked like he was in really good shape, and now he looks like he's in really bad shape. Because the things that he did with the Abomination, he can't do with the stranger. Stranger's pissed off. What Thor does is kind of a cop-out. He goes back in time. So what he does, he does the Superman 1 thing, but he does it with his hammer. He goes back into time, and he goes back to where he initially found the Abomination. So basically, where we were on page 6, we're back on page 6 at this point. However, he's not going to give the Abomination any benefit of the doubt. He knows he's full of crap. So he belts the Abomination, knocks him unconscious, and he actually imprisons the Abomination. So he actually does the stranger a good one here by returning his overseer. Thor leaves. He's happy. He sees Lady Sif. They kiss. She's a beautiful brunette. So yeah, and they look happy together. And this one kind of ends in a happy note for the character. For the reader, I think it was a little less. There wasn't enough Thor Abomination. Vince Colletta kind of really did a bad job with these inks. And it was kind of like a okay, but not special issue. Okay, so I'll look at Marvel bullpen bulletins. Okay, they're talking about Astonishing Tales. This is when they tried out Doctor Doom and kind of Kazar for their own comic. It was sort of a tryout thing. Lasted a few issues. Some of the stories were pretty good. I'll probably read a couple. So they're talking about Kazar a lot. They're talking about Amazing Adventures. they mentioned Sergeant Fury and Iron Man, so there's some type of Iron Man shield thing coming up. This is 1970. Stanley, there's something about filmmakers. Okay, so Stanley at this time was meeting filmmakers. Yeah, around 1970, Stanley started getting out of comics. Another item, they're talking about Thor. They're talking about what happened was that John Buscema was the regular artist, but Jack Kirby had to sub for him. And they're also talking about Silver Surfer number 18. So I guess they're interesting. Kirby was about to leave at this time, but they're promoting him quite nicely there. And they're talking about subscriptions, and Stan Lee saying, Stanley's soapbox is basically saying, he's saying hi to everyone. That's about it. In-house ad for Kazar and Doctor Doom and Astonishing Tales. I'll definitely talk about one of those issues, if not more. They were good. Some of them were good. Okay, we're going to look at the letters page. The Hammer Strikes. I have not read these beforehand, so I have to see. It looks like they're talking about issues 170 to 173. These are really well-written letters. Okay, one is really intense here, in that he's giving all types of editorial suggestions. And he's mentioning Lord of the Rings. Oh, he's doing a huge dissection. He's talking about Thor 143 to 169. So this guy's going deep. This guy is a comic nerd. He's oh my God. This letter is, I can't read it because there's too much stuff I don't care about. But this guy is super passionate. This is like Chat GPT style, and this is in 1970. Talking about Odin. This guy, oh my God, that was a huge paragraph. And they just kind of give it, they kind of talk at him, poor guy from Levittown, saying that, yeah, hey, they actually said nothing here. There's two sentences, and it says nothing. Okay, I guess Jack Kirby was still drawing the comic at the time. Talking about Don Blake. Oh yeah, just talking about the Don Blake and the Thor personas. More of a question about psychology. So anyway, I didn't really learn anything on what Thor fans thought. Oh, there's more letter pages. Oh, this is interesting. A person really liked the Kirby issue with Thor and the Ringmaster. I remember that issue. It's kind of making suggestions about. This person says they've been reading comic books since Bucky Barnes died in the 40s. So wow, this guy was like a long time reader. Yeah. So. Yeah, this is just stream of consciousness from him. And the editorial is really saying nothing to him. It's weird. Oh, they were disappointed. Oh, yeah, there was an issue. I guess it was the origins of Galactus. This person felt disappointed. Yeah, okay, I could see that. All right. So anyway, I learned nothing from the letters. We see an in-house ad for Conan. This is probably before the first issue came out. I love these Conans. I love these early Barry Smith Conans. I grew up on the John Buscema Conans. He loved drawing that character. So I'll kind of do stories of him. So that's about it. So that is my review of Thor 178 from June 1970. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.